All right, so get this. We're going on a deep dive today into the story of a phrase that sounds, well, kind of bonkers at first. Etoain shrdlu.
You got that right. It's not exactly everyday conversation, but you know what? This weird phrase, it's like a key. Unlocks all this cool stuff about how language works, history, even tech.
It's kind of like secret code almost.
Exactly, and we'll see how it pops up in places you wouldn't believe.
So just to be clear, etoain shrdlu, not some, ancient spell or anything.
Nope, definitely like magic, though it does come from a time that feels almost magical now.
Yeah, like way back. Before computers were everywhere, hot metal typesetting. You imagine, like giant machines spitting out metal letters to print the news.
Yeah, those were the days. We're talking linotype machines, workhorses of the printing world for decades.
So, okay, paint me a picture. You're this linotype operator.
Yeah.
Surrounded by these, massive machines.
Yeah.
Your job, you're setting the type, making lines of text out of metal.
Yeah.
And you got to be fast.
Oh, yeah. Deadlines, you know how it is.
Speed is key.
And that's where the linotype keyboard gets interesting. They designed it so the letters you use most. Right there, front and center, first two columns of keys.
Proof. So, what, the vowels are all together?
Not all together, but close. First column was etoain, down the line. Second column, you had shrdlu.
Wait a second. That's our mystery phrase. Etoain shrdlu.
Bingo. They didn't set out to create a weird word, of course. It was all about efficiency. But that layout kind of had a side effect.
Okay, so time for the blooper reel. What happened when a linotype operator messed up? Typo, wrong letter, anything like that?
So they had to scrap the whole line of type, right?
Yeah.
Fastest way, run a finger down those first two columns, created a slug of metal, a kind of placeholder.
And that slug spelled etoain shrdlu.
Exactly. Now imagine you're picking up your newspaper, and bam! There it is, this jumbled word just sitting there.
I'd be like, what on earth? I mean, people must have been confused.
Oh, I'm sure. But here's the thing, right? This little mistake happens so often. It's kind of funny, right? It ends up in dictionaries. That's how common it became.
No way. Officially in the dictionary.
That's how impactful this printing quirk was. You're going to wonder, have you ever seen etoain shrdlu out in the wild?
That's a good question. Maybe in, an old book. Or, I don't know, movie credits. It'd be cool to spot it.
It's out there. There was even a documentary about the end of hot metal printing at the New York Times called, you guessed it, Farewell, etoain shrdlu.
So it's like a cultural icon almost.
Kind of, but it's more than just a fun story. This error-turned famous phrase, it points to something much deeper, something still important today.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Think about it. Etoain shrdlu. It's basically a map of how often we use different letters. And that knowledge, that's powerful stuff, even in the digital age.
Okay, I'm not seeing the connection. Help me out here.
Well, think about cryptography, codes, ciphers, all that spy stuff. Knowing which letters pop up most, that can crack a code wide open.
Whoa, hold up. So etoain shrdlu is like a secret weapon for code breakers.
In a way, yeah. It's like having a cheat sheet for language. But it goes even deeper. Computers, how they understand what we say, what we write, that also relies on letter frequency.
Wait, you're telling me my computer knows etoain shrdlu?
Not consciously, of course, but the systems that process language, they're built on this knowledge of which letters are most common, how they combine into words. It's kind of like how our brains learn language, too.
So when I'm typing an email, my computer's secretly analyzing every letter, every word, based on etoain shrdlu.
Not exactly etoain shrdlu, but the principle's the same. And think about this, even your keyboard, the QWERTY layout we all use, that's connected to this too.
No way. My keyboard is haunted by the ghost of etoain shrdlu.
Haunted might be a bit strong, but influenced, for sure. We'll get into all that, but it just goes to show this seemingly random phrase. It's woven into the fabric of how we communicate even today.
Okay, now I got into the keyboard connection. Spill the beans.
All right, let's rewind a bit, back to the early days of typewriters.
So before we jumped into this whole keyboard thing, you mentioned etoain shrdlu. Helps computers understand language. I'm all ears because that sounds pretty futuristic to me.
It is. And honestly, it's probably closer to your everyday life than you think. Think about, when you talk to your smart speaker or use an app to translate a language.
Okay, yeah, I use those all the time.
Those tools, they rely heavily on understanding letter frequency and patterns.
You mean when I ask my smart speaker to play my favorite song, it's actually analyzing the letters, figuring out what I mean based on how often those letters appear together.
That's exactly right. It's pretty amazing.
That's mind-blowing. So it's like they're learning the secret code of human language.
You got it. And it helps them predict what words might come next in a sentence or figure out the meaning of a word based on the context.
That's kind of how our brains work too, right? We don't walk around consciously thinking, okay, E is the most common letter, better use that one. But our brains, they've picked up on those patterns over time.
That's a great comparison. And just like our brains are constantly adapting to new slang and ways of speaking, these language processing systems, they're evolving too. They're getting better and better at understanding all those little nuances of human language, and a big part of that is thanks to knowing how often we use certain letters and words.
Okay, so we've covered secret codes and computers learning to speak our language. Now let's talk keyboards. I have a feeling there's more to this QWERTY layout than meets the eye.
You're absolutely right. The arrangement of those keys, the one we use every day without even thinking about it, it wasn't just a random choice. It's a result of a lot of thought, experimentation, and you guessed it, letter frequency plays a starring role here too.
So I'm guessing they put the most frequently used letters in the easiest spots to reach, right? Makes sense for speed and efficiency.
You got it. The goal was to optimize typing speed and accuracy. But here's where things get really interesting. You might be thinking, hold on, if etoain shrdlu has all the most frequent letters, shouldn't those keys all be right next to each other on the keyboard?
Yeah, why isn't it like etoain all in a row for ultimate typing domination?
That's a great question. And that's where the history of keyboard design comes in. Early typewriters, even some early keyboards, they did actually try grouping those frequent letters together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they ran into a bit of a snag. Mechanical jamming.
Wait, like those old typewriters, they'd actually get stuck if you typed too fast.
Exactly. The type bars would collide, get all jammed up.
Wow, I never thought about that.
So the QWERTY layout, which we still use today, was actually a solution to this mechanical problem. They had to deliberately separate some of the most frequent letters, just enough to prevent those jams.
The keyboard we use every day is actually a reminder of the limitations of old technology. Huh. It makes you wonder how our current tech quirks might shape the future, right?
It's a great point, and it's a testament to human ingenuity, too. Finding creative solutions to problems, even when it means going against what seems logical, like separating commonly used letters.
Okay, but back to language for a second. You mentioned earlier that the exact order of letter frequency is changing over time. Does that mean, like, etoain shrdlu is becoming obsolete, like a linguistic dinosaur?
That's a great question. It leads to a really important point. Is etoain shrdlu still an accurate representation of how we use language in the digital age?
Yeah, with all the texting slang and emojis and abbreviations flying around online, I bet things are changing pretty rapidly. So is E still the king of letters? Or has it been dethroned?
Well, recent studies looking at massive amounts of digital text have shown some interesting shifts. E is still up there, but letters like A and O, they're moving on up.
That makes sense. A is in tons of common words, and O is in all those OMGs and LOLs we're always using online.
You got it. And then there's the whole world of emojis, which adds another layer's complexity to how we communicate. It's like a whole new language evolving right before our eyes, alongside our traditional alphabet.
It's like emojis are hieroglyphics for the digital age, right?
Ugh.
Future archaeologists are going to have a field day trying to decipher our texts.
I know, right? It's a fascinating thought. It's like we're creating this linguistic time capsule filled with all the slang and abbreviations and emojis that define our digital communication.
So where does that leave etoain shrdlu? Is it destined to be a relic of the past? Just a funny story from the days of clunky printing presses?
Not necessarily. While its specific order of letters might not perfectly reflect how we communicate today, its symbolic value, that's still really strong. It reminds us that language is always changing, always adapting. And even seemingly insignificant errors can have a lasting impact on how we communicate.
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Etoain shrdlu, this product of wanting things to be faster, more efficient, has become a symbol of how language endures, even as technology keeps changing things up.
It really makes you think. And speaking of thinking, we've been diving deep into the past and present of etoain shrdlu. But what about the future? How might this phrase and the lessons it holds shape the way we communicate in the years to come?
Well, we've been on quite the adventure with this whole etoain shrdlu thing, haven't we?
It has been quite a journey.
Who knew a random string of letters could unlock so much? About history, language, even the future of how we communicate.
It's like I was saying earlier, sometimes the most unexpected things lead to the most fascinating discoveries.
I'm with you there. But before we wrap up, I'm still thinking about, how etoain shrdlu is kind of a product of its time, right? Reflects those letter frequencies from way back when, the pre-digital world. Makes you wonder, what'll be the S1 shrdlu of our time? Like, what will our digital fingerprints say about how we use language today?
Ooh, that's a good one. Imagine centuries from now, right? Some future linguist digging through all our digital stuff, trying to decipher our tweets, our texts, all those emojis.
I can just picture the headlines now. Ancient digital texts reveal rise of LOL and the mysterious goat emoji.
Haha, yeah. But it does highlight something. Language is always changing, always reflecting the tools we use. Like, etoain shrdlu came from the linotype machine. Well, our digital communication, that's leaving its own mark on language.
So any predictions? Will we all be talking in emojis and acronyms someday? Will etoain shrdlu be totally forgotten?
I don't have a crystal ball or anything,
Yeah,
but I think it's safe to say language will adapt. New technologies, they always shape how we communicate. I mean, look at voice assistants, AI, all that. It's already changing how we use language.
yeah. Like I was saying before, I probably talk to my smart speaker more than I talk to some of my relatives these days. But it really is fascinating to think about, how technology and language, they're kind of intertwined.
Yeah, they really are. And who knows, maybe someday etoain shrdlu will make a comeback, become a symbol of like a bygone era of communication, a reminder of how adaptable language is.
It really is amazing. Something born from a mistake ends up having so much meaning.
Hmm.
It goes to show you never know where a deep dive might lead you.
Exactly. It's all about keeping an open mind.
Well, folks, that's about it for our deep dive into the curious world of etoain shrdlu. Hope you learned something new.
It's been fun exploring with you.
And remember, next time you see a typo or some weird tech glitch, don't just ignore it. Take a closer look. You never know what stories are hidden in plain sight. Until next time, happy exploring, everyone.